Hi guys, welcome back to Cursed Book Animations, a channel where I draw out the scenes of books. Today's book is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I'll only be doing the first chapter, so it should be a pretty quick video. I would like to point out that the other day I was in Barnes & Noble and I was in the Spanish section and I found out that the Spanish version is just called Gótico, and that is wild to me that they just like dropped the Mexican part. I mean, I know a lot of book covers and titles are adapted based on language and even country, but that's like half the title of the book, but oh well, I guess. Disclaimer, I've never read any other Gothic novels, so it's entirely possible that I just like Gothic novels and that this book is nothing special, but at least for now, it's in my top 10. I just thought it was, like the vibes in this book were really cool. So that's why it's here. Anyways, for those of you who don't know, and I didn't, so I googled it, the difference between horror and gothic basically boils down to horror eliciting bursts of intense fear and gothic cultivating a growing sense of dread. Gothic also has more of a literary and character-driven focus, and horror tends to have more of a plot-based focus. And of course, there can always be some overlaps between them. Anyways, Mexican Gothic isn't really young adult, so if you're tired of hearing me do those, here you go. Our main character is Naomi, and she is a socialite, which basically means her whole job is to be sexy and educated so that she can make social connections. Naomi can play the piano and speak English in addition to her native language of Spanish, and she has recently gotten an interest in anthropology, although she's not very good at sticking with things. The opening scene consists of Naomi and her date leaving a costume party. The guy she's with is dressed as a horse because Naomi really wanted to win the costume contest. She was going to go as the horse's jockey, but then she decided that it wasn't sexy enough, and she didn't tell her date about that. This certainly shows us how disconnected she is, just like she doesn't really have a whole lot of sympathy or empathy towards this guy. I mean, why not just tell your date ahead of time if you knew? Like, the man made a paper mache horse head, Naomi. Like, the least you can do is tell him that you're not going with the theme anymore. Oh well. Anyways, they hail a cab, and overall, Naomi is basically super dismissive of her date. He asks for a kiss, um, and instead she just gives him her cigarette, like, oh, here, it has my lipstick on it. So she gets home, and her dad says that he's going to share something with her, but she can't tell anyone, not even her mother. So it turns out that Naomi's dad got this weird letter from her cousin Catalina. Now, Catalina is an orphan, so her closest family is Naomi and Naomi's family. The letter is like just this rambling thing about ghosts and poison, and Catalina basically says that her husband is trying to kill her and she misses Naomi. Naomi says it's very out of character as the letter is handwritten, and usually her cousin is very concise and prefers to use a typewriter. So Naomi and her dad are pondering over this letter. Her dad says that he wrote to Catalina's husband, Virgil, about it, but didn't get any answers. Naomi's dad even mentioned putting Catalina in an asylum, or at least bringing her to Mexico City to see a doctor. But decided that it would be best if Naomi went up there to investigate her, since her dad doesn't trust Virgil. He thinks it's strange how quickly Catalina married Virgil. Perhaps Virgil was after her money. I'll also mention here that, like, really, this family is all that Catalina has. And so that includes, like, her financial, what would have been her financial independence before she married this guy. And so that's part of the reason why her dad is thinking that this guy is after her money, because apparently he doesn't really have any. It's all Catalina. Naomi also thinks that Catalina's behavior is a bit odd. She hadn't even known Catalina was seeing Virgil before the marriage, and Catalina would always talk to her. But now she hasn't heard from her at all in months. So in exchange for her father promising to fund her anthropology studies, she agrees to go and investigate the situation. So what she does is she takes a train out to the mountain town where Catalina is supposedly staying. Her father sent word ahead of her that Naomi would be coming to visit, but of course she wasn't exactly invited. Nevertheless, she arrives in this weird mountain town where the train only comes once a week. And it's just like a very like strange, like not necessarily positive strange vibe. Anyways, that was the first chapter of Mexican Gothic. This is probably the most well-known book I've covered so far. It usually takes me a while to catch up on trendy books, but one day I had a job interview at like 6 a.m., except it wasn't a job interview. They just wanted to like check my vitals, so they made me pee in a cup and test my blood and that kind of thing. Um, because it was for a hospital. Anyways, I broke down crying because it took them like half an hour to figure out how to get my blood, and in the end, I didn't even let them take it, and they were kind of rude about it too. So I asked if I could come visit my grandma because who else was up at like 7 a.m. And while I waited for her response, I went to the Target near her house and I picked up this book. Anyways, goodbye.